we hate on others because others hate on us. But the reason that others hate on us is because they don't love themselves. But the reason they don't love themselves is because other people are hating on them. So it's this cycle of hate, propagating hate, propagating hate. And, and this is why, and I talk a lot about this and we've got this. The number one thing that we can do is to heal our own woundedness and take care of our broken hearts and pay better attention to all the negative messaging swirling in our heads about who we are and the horrible things that we say to ourselves about ourselves, and start to undo that circuitry and create new, healthy, positive, self-loving, affirming circuitry so that we feel better regulated and we feel more in flow. Because when we feel that way, we're going to be less likely to hate on others. Why? Because we're not hating on ourselves.
Welcome my guest, Ritu Bhasin, a belonging and leadership expert and best-selling author of We Got This, Unlocking the Beauty of Belonging. Ritu is the CEO and founder of Bhasin Consulting, Inc., a global diversity, equality, and inclusion consulting firm founded in 2010 that has worked with hundreds of world-renowned organizations. She has been a professional speaker for over 15 years and has presented to over 100,000 people globally across thousands of sessions. She's known for delivering highly inspiring, engaging, practical, data-driven keynotes across the range of DEI areas, including inclusive leadership, allyship, authenticity, belonging, and empowerment. Okay, I'm welcoming on the show Ritu Bhasin. Thank you so much for being on the show. I wanted to make sure I said your name properly. So of course, I listened to how to pronounce your name properly, because I think that is something that you speak so highly about, is really claiming your name and your heritage and making sure people pronounce it right, because you're so proud in being who you are today. And I hope I didn't chop that up at all.
Erica, you nailed it. So good job. I also, it's interesting. I was just talking about this earlier this week. I was in New York speaking there for an audience. And I was talking about the importance of our names. And one of the things I was saying is that, well, it's our identity. It's a key marker of who we are. And then I also tied it to our ancestors, our ancestral lineage, like our names reflect the people from whom we come from. And that is a really powerful thing. And it just reinforces why our names are important, and making sure that people say our names correctly happens.
Well, it's actually interesting. And I just thought of this in today's world. As you know, there's a lot of people now choosing a different name or a different pronoun or identity because they don't feel like they associate their name with their identity, if you want to say. So it's an interesting topic, actually, to even think about how powerful our name really defines who we are, which is really interesting. We could go deeper into that. But first of all, I am just so honored to have you on, because as I was mentioning to you, this is a topic I'm super passionate about. I very deeply resonate with, because it has been my journey of rediscovering myself and really feeling I authentically belong where I am, where my 2 feet are. And through my journey, I have been able to cultivate a loving relationship with myself and being able to accept all that I am, the totality and the experiences that have brought me here. But I think there's a lot of people that still struggle with this. So I feel this is honestly one of the most important topics we're going to talk about today, which is belonging, and also how to be our authentic self and truly embodying that and standing in our worth and in our power. So first, most importantly, we need to know your journey of what even brought you to this expertise and passion to help people really feel that they belong and to embody their true identity and authentic beingness, if you want to say.
So my commitment to living a life that's rooted in authenticity and belonging stems from the fact that for decades, I didn't feel that I could. And for me, it started at a very young age, like as a child. So, in a nutshell, I am a child of immigrants. My parents immigrated from India to Canada, which is where I grew up and I live now. I had a front row seat to watching them struggle as new immigrants do in countries that become their new homelands when they don't look like people around them and don't behave like people around them. But then I had my own journey with struggling with my identity formation and connecting to who I am because I experienced cultural confusion on the home front with them. But in addition to that, I deeply struggled because I am a survivor of relentless childhood bullying that was deeply traumatizing. And it was racist childhood bullying, but intersected with gender identity because I was a smart young girl. And also the fact that we just didn't have class privilege compared to the people I grew up around. And in a nutshell, from a very young age, I internalized that something's wrong with me, that I'm broken, that I should mask who I am and push down aspects of my identity. And it's interesting. I started therapy, Erica, at the age of 20. My healing journey really began in my teenage years. I can talk more about that, but I started therapy at the age of 20. I'm now in my late 40s. And on a weekly basis, I am reminded about how I continue to carry woundedness that ties back to those experiences with being bullied and the cultural confusion because I can feel the pain that still lives inside me. And so for me, I deeply care about creating a world where everyone can experience the freedom, the liberation to be who they are and claim belonging because of my own journey to make this happen.
Oh my goodness. And I know there's so much depth into this. And as you experienced bullying, racism, and traumas associated with that, I think there's a lot of people listening right now that have experienced that in some aspect or another growing up, whether it be in their home or when they were a teenager in high school. High school years, I think, are the most challenging. And I think that's when you experienced most of it. Or was it in a little bit younger than that?
So it started at the age of around 11, when my parents moved us from an inner city neighborhood that was very multicultural into a very homogeneous, white, affluent neighborhood, which was a massive financial stretch for them to do. And it started at the age of around 11, and it went through till I'd say I was 16,
Yeah.
17 even.
So that is relatively as you're about to enter high school. And I think a lot of people, I believe, that hold these wounds, it's from that age or possibly younger, right? And I believe, as you were kind of talking about, is like that feeling of that you don't belong. And that feeling, I think a lot of people have experienced. So, of course, we'll go into obviously how to like break down those layers or those masks that we still hold on to. As you said, it's like you're reminded like of that wounding is because it's still a part of like how you have a part of the aspect of you, going through the journey of life that like it will always resurface in some way. But the tools you share today obviously will help people return back to their belonging and their authenticity and owning that, which is key. And so we'll go into that. But I think the common thing, like people, the reason why I believe people feel like they don't belong, as I said, like I think we all experience this, is either because we don't know who we are, fear of what other people think of us, and then or somebody made us feel like we don't belong, such as the bullying, the past trauma, and the avoidance, and all that so forth. So, what do you find is the common reasons we experience that we don't belong in the first place? Like, what do you feel is like the root?
Yeah. So for me, based on my work and research, I can tell you that it is the fear of judgment coming our way, biases. It's you're going to judge me. And in your judgment of me, you're going to reject me, essentially. And this is what strikes at our ability to be who we are. This is what causes us to push down who we are. mask aspects of our identity. Like in my first book, The Authenticity Principle, I break down in detail how it is that when people judge us, both consciously and unconsciously, like it literally causes us to shut down. And then the outcome of this is not being able to experience belonging. So I define belonging as being the profound feeling that we hold inside of ourselves of being honored and accepted for who we are, first and foremost by our own self. And this is what causes us to claim belonging with others. And I get into detail about it in my new book, We've Got This. And so being honored and accepted for who we are happens when people don't judge us. And they do a better job of monitoring how they're engaging in biased behavior and how they treat us. And so for me and the other thing I'll mention here, and this is really important, is that as human beings, we are animals. And as animals, we are very deeply communal. We as human beings, as animals, we crave acceptance in communities, in tribes. And so when people signal to us that they don't like us or they reject us, it literally causes pain in our bodies. And so it's really important that going forward, all of us do a better job of paying attention to how am I signaling my disapproval, my negative judgment of others. How am I signaling this? Because without even realizing it, we can strike at other people's ability to belong through the what's happening on our face, our verbal communication, our nonverbal communication, the tone of our voice. We signal to people, you're not worthy, you're not good enough. And so it's judgment, it's bias.
And as you're kind of talking about, it's like when if you want to say judging or rejecting others, it's almost like in that process, it's a mirror right back to ourselves as we're rejecting and judging ourselves. And then it just becomes a repetitive cycle, right? Yep.
Yeah, I say that in my book. Erica, I think you put your finger on it. I say that we hate on others because others hate on us. But the reason that others hate on us is because they don't love themselves. But the reason they don't love themselves is because other people are hating on them. So it's this cycle of hate, propagating hate. And and this is why, and I talk a lot about this and We've Got This. The number one thing that we can do is to heal our own woundedness and take care of our broken hearts and pay better attention to all the negative messaging swirling in our heads about who we are and the horrible things that we say to ourselves about ourselves, and start to undo that circuitry and create new, healthy, positive, self-loving, affirming circuitry so that we feel better regulated and we feel more in flow. Because when we feel that way, we're going to be less likely to hate on others. Why? Because we're not hating on ourselves.
Absolutely. And I talk a lot about, as you're kind of saying, is like we need to do this healing work. And we'll talk a little deeper into that. But first, I think it's coming to a place of acceptance. I talk about that acceptance as a pathway to self-love, because we need to accept the totality of our beingness, like what has brought us here, the good, the bad, the ugly. And then when we can make peace with that, like it doesn't mean we accept that what has happened to us is okay. It just means I accept this brought me here. And now going forward, I could create, a new way of being, or a new way I respond to something, a new way I show up, instead of living in that space of like keep on rejecting ourselves because this has happened to ourselves. And so, yeah, I would love if you could talk a little bit about acceptance and how do we even get to the place to accept ourselves? Like, what does that even mean per se?
Right. So I love this question. I think it's a really good place to spend some time. So first of all, for many of us, we don't even know that we're judging ourselves, and that we're being mean to ourselves, and that we're hurting ourselves, that we are literally bullying ourselves. We don't even realize we're doing this because we're not tuned in. And so in my new book, We've Got This, the first section of the book, I call it hurting. And really, what I'm trying to do in that section of the book is show how it is, highlight how it is that so many of us start to carry hurt in our bodies tied back to our own identities, and how we carry hurtful messages about who we are. We internalize them, we carry them in our minds, but we also literally carry the pain in our bodies, like the digestive problems we have. It's not because foods upset us, it's the food's fault. It's like that our system, the 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 flora fauna, the nerves in the gut region are disconnected from the brain. We carry a lot of our emotional stress there. We have interrupted sleep, inflamed skin. Like I could go on and on and on. Our bodies are signaling, I am rejecting you because you are being mean to me. And so we're carrying this pain. And so step number one is to really to spend some time doing that deep self-exploration work around, why do I hurt? Where am I carrying my hurt? Like, how am I carrying it? So, like, what are the negative messages I'm saying to myself about myself? Like, literally, actually doing an exercise, and if this will be a painful exercise to do, but would be worthwhile. Like, if I said to you, what are the mean things you say to yourself about yourself? Like, write them down and
Absolutely.
see them on paper. Like, what am I saying to myself? And then the pain related to that, where am I carrying it in my body? How does it show up? And like, and actually literally list for yourself all the things that are happening right now for you, like the interrupted sleep, like the um, uh, constant tension you feel in your shoulders, or the really painful back pain. And like, write it all out and understand that what you are writing out isn't just because you're sitting all day. It's also because there's emotions that are trapped inside your body that are being housed around across your body, and that pain connects to not just sitting, but it's tension. And so doing this type of self-exploration work is important because what it reveals is we're not accepting ourselves. And then we do the really important empowering work of saying to ourselves, okay, number one, going forward, I'm going to replace this negative messaging that I'm holding in my brain about who I am with positive evidence of the truth of my excellence and my amazingness. And in fact, instead of thinking, I'm not smart enough, let me give myself the multiple examples of why I am smart and I am smart enough. Also, the tension that's in my body tied back to the bullying or the hurtful things my elders said to me or the rejection I felt while growing up. How can I physically, literally release the pain from my body, whether that's doing body work with an expert, whether that's you doing on your end, doing yoga, stretching, self massage, like whatever it is to get the stress and tension out of your body. And then the final thing I'll say here, and this is really, really important, is constantly going back to your inner child and saying to yourself, the little, like for me, the little Ritu, for you, the little Erica, what does she need right now? Because in this moment, as an adult, the real reason I'm not accepting myself is because little Ritu didn't feel accepted. But I'm not little Ritu anymore. I'm adult Ritu. So what do I need to tell little Ritu or help little Ritu to know so that she feels loved in this moment and honored in this moment? That's what self-acceptance is about. That's what the work looks like.
It's so good. And you talk a lot about being in the body. And I think there's a lot of people that feel like, for example, I think a lot of people that go through challenging times will question themselves, like, I don't even know myself anymore. Like they'll go through divorce, let's say, a big change like that, or they'll lose a job, or their kid goes off to college and it's like, I don't even know myself anymore because they're so tied to this identity of being the wife, being the, whatever
Yeah. Yeah.
position.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to get back to, I think when we have this identity crisis, if you want to say, is like people, when they're asking like, I don't even know myself anymore, how do people really get to know themselves? I think it sounds so like, an easy
Yes.
question, right? Like, oh, I know myself,
Yeah.
but I don't think people truly know authentically who they are. And and that they're walking in that and embodying that every day and standing in that worthiness of who they are. And instead they put on masks, or as you call it, the performing self as well. And so how would you say somebody really starts to, I mean, this is such a loaded question, if you want to say, because we could go on so many tangents about this, but how do you feel somebody could truly get to know who they are authentically and claim that? I mean, just radically and authentically claim who they are and walk in that truth.
Yeah. So in my first book, The Authenticity Principle, I set out a definition of what authenticity is about. And what I say is that authenticity is the consistent practice of choosing to know who we are, to embrace who we are, and to be who we are as much as possible. So there's the know thyself, embrace thyself, and be thyself. And so what I feel like you're speaking to is that really important pillar of knowing thyself. How do you even know who you are?
Yeah.
And now for some of the people joining us today, you know who you are. Like you know it, you got it. It may be that you're railing against your identity or having challenges in terms of like, how do I actually stand in my power? And just like, I know who I am and I want to be more of it. How do I make that happen? So it's more the second pillar and the third pillar of the definition, knowing, embracing, and being who we are. I can tell you for me in my journey, I struggled with all three. I didn't even know who I was. And in fact, essentially, so from a young age, I internalized a lot of negative messaging that I'm broken, I shouldn't be who I am, tied back to being a young, brown, smart girl who grew up working class initially. And so I then chose to enter one of the most high conforming professions out there because I became a lawyer, which my Indian parents were delighted about because they wanted that to happen. First and foremost. Yep. And, but also societally, like it looks great. Like I'm a lawyer and fancy and all that. Anywho, what I found is that as a young woman of color navigating the corporate towers, the messages around don't be different, be the same as us were never as direct and overt as the childhood bullying, but they were there. And which is why I learned to put on a performing self mask. And I constantly was like feeling like the pressure to curate who I am and mask who I am. And I can remember being in my 20s and my early 30s and literally having a different way of speaking when I was at work during the day. I would do things like my appearance, like I wouldn't talk about my evenings, weekends at all. Like I was living a very, very binary life. I was vigilantly clocking the image I had at work and who I really was. Long story short, I figured out that I realized because my body was screaming pain that I was deeply unhappy by the time I hit my early 30s, which then led to a cascade of events where I ultimately found myself in the south of India at a yoga ashram studying yoga in my mid 30s. And in fact, it's an opening story that I share in my new book, We've Got This, where I'm at the yoga ashram and I'm like, well, who am I going to be? I'm at this yoga ashram. I don't know a single person here. I'm with a few hundred strangers for the next few weeks, like several weeks. I was there to do my yoga teacher training certification. And I heard myself actually say to myself, so who are you going to be? Which side of Ritu? Like by the time I was in my early to mid 30s, I didn't know who I was anymore because I had become so used to curating and masking. So for a lot of us, the know thyself, we actually don't even know who we are anymore because we're so used to curating and masking. Or I think about all the women out there, the moms who have felt pressure to push their own identities and needs down and supporting their spouses or their children or their families. I mean, I could go on and on. But we must know ourselves in order to live an authentic life, to claim belonging. So how do you make that happen? So, I mean, I talk a lot about this online as well, but in a nutshell, first and foremost, we need time with ourselves. It's really hard to figure out who we are if we're constantly around other people And if one of the trauma responses, as you may know, is fawn people pleasing. If we have grown up in a family upbringing where our needs have constantly been suppressed so that other people's needs are put first, in the company of others, we will always feel the pressure to support other people over ourselves. And so time with ourselves, time with yourself, you need time with yourself. Whether that is going for dinner with yourself, going on a weekend retreat with yourself, just go, going for a walk. Yeah, kicking everyone out of the house, going for a walk. We need going to your bedroom, saying, everyone, I'm not feeling well, and I'm going to sleep early because I'm really contagious and I'm not feeling well at all. Don't come near me because you'll get what I have, and it's very germy, even though you're perfectly fine physically. And then just locking yourself in your room. Or I have a friend who locks herself in her bathroom. So like she spends 2 hours in the bathroom every day. And her family's like, what are you doing in there? And she's like, doesn't matter what I'm doing in there. I'm in there. Because that's the only place that she gets a moment of solitude. And so be with yourself. And when you are with yourself, this is the moment to journal and to read and to write and ask yourself important questions. Like you can even just go to Dr. Google and say, self-reflection questions, or like on my website, ritubhasin.com, I call them Empower Pages. I have dozens of free Empower Pages filled with self-reflection questions. Answer the questions, write your answers down. And what you'll start to see is in moments of solitude, when you are engaging in self-reflection and you are actually thinking and exploring who you are, more will become revealed to you. And then the other thing that I'll mention here, and in addition to doing the body work, because the body work, for a lot of us, we can't even hear the voices in our head. Why? Because our bodies are so activated. And so we're trying to hear the voice in our head, but we can't because we're like, oh my God, I want to meditate and I want to be in silence. But instead, all I can think about is the sharp jabbing pain that is in my left shoulder. Okay, so then what will you do to stretch out your left shoulder? To slowly start to release the pain in your shoulder. But if I also said to you, what if I said to you this? What's what do you think your shoulder's telling you? Like, is there a image that's coming to mind, or would you give that, is there heat? Like, how would you describe the pain? And even starting to explore the pain in your shoulder, you'll start to notice sensation coming up and meaning and. So this type of body-based, mind-based self-inquiry is critical. And then the last thing I'll mention is I have deeply believed this for years and years and years now. But the more that I have honed this skill, I call it my core wisdom, your core wisdom, our core wisdom. Each of us your core wisdom is the inner knowing you hold within that helps you to better understand what your mind and body are saying, settle your mind and body, be more grounded, rooted, have a healthier nervous system, be more resilient, live a life of joy. I believe all answers are within, as the great yogis have said for centuries. All answers are within. So the next time you want to make a decision about something and you don't know what the decision is, I'm going to invite you to be in solitude, close your eyes, do deep diaphragm breathing or belly breathing. You can Google how to do it. Just be with yourself. And ask yourself, should I do A or should I do B? Or even a better question, if I were to do A, how would that feel for me? And what you're tracking for in the body is feelings of expansion and feeling free and feeling warmth, or feeling that heart literally fill and expand. And you're also in tandem clocking for constriction. So as I ask myself, should I do this? Do I start to notice things tightening in my body, and my breath is getting tighter and my stomach is starting to swirl or whatever? All answers are within. And what am I describing here? Your inner knowing. So there's know thyself, like, oh my God, I'm an extrovert, or I really, really, really love fried food, which I do. I love chips. I really do. Potato chips. or I love music or whatever. There's the, what do I like? And then there's the inner knowing. We want all the knowings. We want all the knowings. But the more you get to know yourself, it's the inner knowing that continues to grow and grow and grow. And for me, actually, that inner knowing, your core wisdom, becomes like a compass, your inner compass. At any given moment, I can tune in and I'll know what to do. And if I don't know what to do because my body is signaling myriad conflicting sensations, then I know if there's too much noise happening inside me, I need to go and lock myself in the bathroom.
Yeah. You know, when you talk about this, I remember and recall this moment where I decided to go on a walk with my dog. And this time specifically, I was like, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to leave my phone at home. I'm just going to go for a walk, be out in nature in the sunlight, walking my dog, peaceful walk. And I remember I was in conflict of deciding the next thing to do, meaning like an online course that I was thinking about focusing on, like my direction. And I had two things in mind, two things very passionate about, two things I feel I'm an expert in, that I could serve somebody in. So I'm on this walk and just suddenly I wasn't even like questioning anything, which I think it's good to ask yourself questions to get clarity, but it just downloaded. And I knew that was the direction to go. And it literally, as you talk about, it's like this rush of just like release. Like that's it. Clarity.
Yeah.
And it would not have yeah, exactly. And it would not have happened if I took my phone. Because
Oh,
again, that
1,000%.
yeah, that this is what we're inundated with is the constant noise and the people and our phones and the social media and all these things. And that's why it's so key that you talk about this. And I think this is so important to crystallize is we need that time by ourselves, that quiet time so that we could go within and really connect to our inner wisdom, our inner knowing, our core wisdom. Ritu, there's so much more I want to ask you. Like I am the wisdom you share on how to really connect to our authenticity and belonging is not only critical for all of us. Nobody is absent of this work, and it is probably the most important thing to really live an abundant, fulfilling, joyful life is living as our authentic self and being able to live in our own unique expression. But I know our call is cut a little short, so I really want to honor your time. But I want to ask you, could we set up a second interview so we could go more into depth? Because I think we could really serve the audience today if you were willing to do that.
Oh, I'd be happy to. Sure. Sorry. I thought you were going to ask me another question, and I was fully in. Like, yes.
Well, I would love to ask you another question, but I want to honor your time because I know we have to hop off. Am I correct?
I have 15 minutes left.
Oh, you do have 15. Okay, then I'm going to go deeper.
Yeah.
And then if we have to continue more, we will. Okay, so
totally.
Amazing.
I have a call at 2. I'm just checking. I have a call at 2, but yeah, no, you have me until. Are you on the West Coast? I think you're LA.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I have until 2, which would be your 11.
Great. Okay.
14 minutes.
Okay, let's go. Let's go a little deeper.
Yeah.
So as we're talking about the connecting to our body and our inner knowing, I think this is so important. And you talk a lot about our body's wisdom and how we feel in our body is really directing us where we should go. And I want people to really develop a more sound relationship, a connected relationship with our body. It's not just like our mind that's always directing us, it's not always our mind that is right. It's more our being in tune with our body and what our body and the feelings we're having is really the compass. And so how can we develop this better relationship? You did talk about the importance of breath, but if you were to like name maybe the one thing that really was the game-changing thing that you did to reclaim and reconnect to your body and your inner knowing.
Yeah, it's such a good question. You know, it's interesting, Erica. I get questions like this all the time where it's like, Ritu Bhasin, you're 48 and how did you get your skin to look like that? Because it's entirely natural. Or Ritu Bhasin, what's the one thing you did to blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, oh my God, you know what? It's like a full cascading effect of it. But I will say, so there's a few things here that I would say. You said it just a moment ago, Erica, like I think this is so important. Breathwork is key. So we know this from a science perspective. And when I say science perspective, like As I mentioned earlier, I'm my culture, my background, I'm Indian, and it's like my community, my people, my ancestors from thousands of years ago knew that breathwork was critical for being better tuned into our bodies, and also for decision making, and also for spiritual connection, and also for health and regulation, and blah 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 blah. Now, because of systems of oppression and et cetera, we now have to validate this old technology that we knew was legit, but we have Western academic institutions using great Western research to validate, yes, breathwork is really important. So it is a scientifically proven, established guarantee that if you can better regulate your breath and how you breathe, and in particular, let me be more specific. When we are stressed, the nervous system activates. We go into nervous system activation, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and more. We tend to start taking shallow breaths. What we want to do instead to engage the parasympathetic nervous system is take deep, deep, deep belly breaths. So like fill the bottom of your lungs as much as you can so that the belly pushes out. And then on the exhalation, expel the breath from the bottom of the lungs all the way out through the mid chest, upper chest, and out. Also back breathing, which we don't actually, back body breathing, which a lot of people don't talk about, but back body breathing is really important too. If you can do this, if it feels comfortable for you to do, you put your hands on your back, right where the rib cage ends, right around your waist. And as you take a breath, try to fill your lungs with air right to the bottom of your lungs and into the back and where your hands are. And that is a full belly breath, but back body breathing. You're also filling the back lungs. So taking these deep breaths are critical. If you were to say to me, Ritu, what's one thing? Just I only have time for one thing. I can only do one thing. I would say breath work. Hands down. And I mean, we know from science, it also helps with anti-aging, and it helps with stress regulation. It helps to better tune into what is my mind saying. It helps to calm the body down when we're like, I'm stressing the F out. Yes. So breath work. But I would say the other thing that has really helped me, let's go back to what I was saying earlier, Erica, tuning in and using, knowing that all answers are within. Yeah. I constantly, all day long. And by the way, I have done this for years. Like over the last several years, I have really deepened my understanding of trauma and how it lives in our bodies. And I have done a lot of trauma healing work. I've studied trauma. So I have, it's been crystallized through my exploration of trauma and healing trauma. However, I was intuitively doing this even years prior to that, where I constantly say to myself, oh, I just felt a little twitch in my chest, or, oh, something feels like, oh, I'm signaling. I feel anxiety coming on. I feel anxiousness coming on. And I can feel the twitch. I can feel it. And then I pause and I'll say, what's happening in your body, Ritu? What's going on? Oh, okay. You're feeling uncomfortable. All right. Okay. Why are you uncomfortable? What just happened? And I look around the environment, or more importantly, it's like, oh, I just read that email and I was really upset by what that person said, or I just read that text message, or the news alert came in. And so I'm constantly clocking inside my body. And by the way, so what do you need to do? Literally all day say to yourself, what am I feeling in my body? What am I feeling in my body? Like, write this on yellow sticky notes and stick them around your house, or put them in in the bathroom, on the bathroom mirror, because you go into the bathroom a lot in any given day. And every time you're in the bathroom and you see it on the mirror, say to yourself, how am I feeling? What's happening in my body? Let me feel it. Let's tune into my body. We're raising body awareness. And if you're finding, it's been a few days now, or all day, or it's been a few days, I've been tuning in and I can't feel anything, I'm not clocking or noticing anything, you might be in heightened nervous system activation, like really, really stressed, for example, or something's happening that's caused you to disassociate with your body. When these moments are happening, when you can't clock sensation, you can't clock anything, this is a moment for deepening our breath work, deepening our body work, like stretching and massaging, going for a walk, being in stillness. So you come back to your body, because any given time your body is telling you exactly what you want and need. And the very last thing I'll say is you were spot on, Erica. Oftentimes we think that it's our minds that have the answers. Actually, the body goes first. In fact, our body knows what's up before our minds can even respond. And frankly, our minds largely are responding to our bodies. So
Right.
if your body feels calm and regulated in a situation, you'll calm your mind. Like, for example, sometimes I have claustrophobic feelings, and in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I can say to my mind, calm down, calm down. So I do kick into an I'm safe, Ritu, you're safe, you're safe. But what am I also doing? I have my hand on my chest and I'm like, heart, I got you. And I'm starting my deep breaths. I'm calming my body down. So your body goes first. Take care of your bodies.
Yeah. And you touched on something earlier that I think that I want to crystallize a little bit. You talked about digestion, you talked about back pain and all these things. And a lot of people have heard the saying, like, your body keeps score, and all that trauma or that resistance you hold in your body. It's almost like for digestion, for example, it's that fight or flight. Like once your body's in fight or flight, you can't digest. So of course you're going to have bloating. Of course you're going to have, problems in that area. And I think that's something that needs to be crystallized and talked about more, that once you start to heal yourself, and we could talk deeper on another episode about the healing process, because you talk about the top down and bottom up, which I think is good to talk about. But once you heal yourself, then you'll start reducing your inflammation, you'll start losing the weight, your hair will start growing back, like you'll start showing up like just in your power, if you want to say. And like, so it's so critical to turn off that fight or flight and those reasons we put up these guards or this armor to protect ourselves, because that's really what it is. And so I would love yeah, so I would honestly, I feel there's so much more to talk about. I have so many more questions because I really want people to understand, like, not only is this for us, the listeners, but I think this is also something to teach your children, because I know my partner has a teenager, and I was just, as prep for this interview, I'm thinking about the things I could teach her, not only your wisdom, parting on your wisdom, but the things I've learned through my own journey of how could our kids even feel like they belong, and not be like, so many of us seek outside validation. So how could we really just validate ourselves? And it's
Yeah.
through this work, which is so necessary. So yeah, I would love to go deeper into this. But first, of course, I will. This is your newest book. We got this. I'm so excited. I've been diving into. I love it. She shares her own personal journey and how she's really, worked through the feeling of belonging and really embodying your authenticity. So there's so much goodness. I can't wait to have a further deep conversation into this. But again, I want to honor your time. So everybody, where could people follow and learn more in the meantime?
Oh, bless. Well, first of all, I love, love, love hearing from people. So feel free to reach out. Don't be shy. I'm encouraging you. You can reach out to me. First of all, I have an empowerment site, ritubhasin.com. Sign up for the mailing list there. I send free goodies just once a month right to your inbox. Connect with me on LinkedIn because it's professional, but I always say the good shit's on Instagram. It's the best place. I know I respond to all my messages myself. And so follow me on Instagram. And again, reach out because I love hearing from you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So I'll just ask you what I ask all my guests, because it's essential I ask it. uh,
Yes.
if you were to share a piece of wisdom, a life lesson that you've just learned in your journey that you just feel you need to shout out to everybody listening right now, what would that piece of wisdom be and why?
Yeah. I think the greatest piece of wisdom or the greatest life lesson that I have learned is that, or the thing that I wish I knew then that I know now, is that I thought back in the day when I was struggling, deeply struggling, that if I shared my pain and my insecurities and told you how messed up I constantly felt, if I actually showed up as my true authentic self, I felt like people would take their love and affection away. And because of that, I created this really perfectly poised person. Like I looked good, and I looked the part, and I sounded good, and I sounded intelligent and all of that. And I acted like everything was amazing. Like I was sunshine Ritu. Everything was perfect and amazing. And in fact, I call it my PPA armor, my positivity, perfection, achievement armor, that people would like me more and be more drawn to me. I now know that the opposite is true, that the more I talk about how deeply I struggle and how I find life to be really hard, and I feel extremely grateful and blessed that I get to live this very privileged life. I'm not confused. I recognize all the privilege and blessings I have, and I still find life to be really difficult. The more I have shared this with people, I have found the more people like me. And why? Because they feel safe around me, because they're like, oh, she understands, she gets it. I can be me around her. And so I wish I knew that then. And the other thing I'll say is I worried that I'd miss out on career opportunities. I wouldn't get ahead and people wouldn't hire me as much and blah, blah, blah. And again, the opposite is true. My career literally soared and took off the moment I stood more in my power. And so that is my wisdom that I leave you with.
So amazing. Yes, I believe that is radically the truth, is that when we stand in our humanness and not need to put on this perfection highlight reel, like everything is, again, stars and rainbows, then we are able to connect with people at a human level. And like you said, that creates safety, that creates empathy, that creates vulnerability. And, this is what people connect to. And so I think that is so powerful and so valuable. And I think people really need to hear that. So thank you so much, Ritu.
Thank you.
This has been such an honor. I love the work you're doing. It is so essential. And I just thank you for sharing your heart today. And again, I can't wait to have another conversation.
Oh, bless. Thank you, Erica. And thank you to everyone joining us.
Thank you.